there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Listening to different podcasts, like in a whole different reality, which they think completely different things about Bitcoin.
They have got my money in their banking system. I should be able to access it, right?
Apple is live.
There's a good number of fucking, like, pretty smart Bcashers.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 141, Organizing Bliss 2025 and Trump's Ross pardon, featuring the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Jonathan Silverblood. Today is Saturday the 1st, 2025. I'm your host, Jeremy Jett. It's doing the producing, same as always. BCH price is down, which I've got here on the slide. Sad in honor of Trump, one of his top memes, just one word, sad. That's some marketing genius for you. USD $421.85 for 100 megasats, which is down. One BTC sat buys 242.2 BCH sats, so we're actually near all-time lows on the ratio there with BTC, but the last two times that's happened, we've had a massive pump, so maybe we can get some of that action. Who knows? One ETH buys 771 megasats, which is down. Selene, 790 30-day users, and Tokenaut has 5,212 BCH TVL, but that's clearly bugged because it's underreporting the AnyHedge stats by about at least 15,000 BCH. So I've told Matthew to look into that. All right, our guest today is Jonathan Silverblood, the Bliss creator and General Protocols co-founder. He's been on the show a couple of times before, I think, right? At least twice. How you doing, Jonathan? Welcome to the show. What's the latest with you?
Doing good.
So what's the...
thanks for having me again.
What's the latest? We're not going to do a slide talking about it, but what's going on with General Protocols lately? Do you have any updates with us on BCH Bull? Anything you can tease there, or how's the mood?
Yeah, we're going slow and steady. So we'll come out with more information when we're ready to come out with more information. Generally speaking, BCH Bull is doing fine, and we're slowly growing still.
Exo Cash. There's been a lot of people excited about that. Very slick initial video that you put out for that. What's the behind the scenes report on that?
There's a lot of progress being made, but nothing that is ready to be shared at this point.
Okay, all right, Mr. Mysterious over here. And BCH in general, how are you feeling we're now in 2025, right? The last time we talked would have been months and months ago at the least. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was a long time ago. What's your optimism? What's your outlook for 2025?
I think BCH is going to do fantastic. Not only is 2025 like the year in the 4-year cycle where most of crypto does fine, but this is also the year where I think a lot of the benefits of previous upgrades, in this time specifically the cash token upgrade, is going to come live and become more visible. We've seen it already with Moria doing their beta run. I'm expecting a lot more token-oriented projects to come out this year.
Anything in particular?
Nothing that I can share.
Okay. All right. We clearly got a lot cooking in the pipeline that can't be made public just yet. And what about the discussion surrounding BCH? I mean, you obviously are involved every single day, basically, and monitoring it very closely. Do you think that we're starting to get a bit more credibility and reputation outside of the BCH space, especially having observed it for so many years?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a couple of years now since we changed the sentiment and culture away from being essentially victims of the evil upgrades that didn't happen in terms of block size, to actually, we are doing our own thing and it's pretty awesome. And not only are we pretty consistent in our own social circles, like everyone seems to be on the same page and moving forward in lockstep, but we're also seeing a very large amount of external actors or people who are in multiple ecosystems being unable to find anything negative about BCH. And more importantly, many actors are now talking positively about BCH and asking, like, how do we get the stuff they have over to our side?
Yeah, do you have any examples? Do you want to dive deeper on that a little?
No, it's just general passing, like things I see when I read. I don't want to call out names.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, I think it is definitely a trend that we're seeing, and it is very heartening to me because by definition, critics are going to criticize, right? So if there is anything that was there to be criticized, undoubtedly we would be hearing about it, right? There's no way that we could not hear about it. But except for the world's most shallow complaint, which is the price hasn't pumped, which you can, levy at anything, and we don't. And also, it's not even a very strong criticism in the sense that anybody replying can't be like, well, that's under my control. Everybody kind of knows that's sort of out of your control in the direct sense. In the indirect, very long-term sense, it isn't. But in the direct sense, it's like if you're doing the right things, well, then that's going to take care of itself sooner or later, basically. And I think people can see that that's happening. Do you think that we might have some silent defectors? Do you think there's a few people who are...
I don't think that at all.
No? They're not like picking up some BCH?
No, in something like the last 3 to 5 years, I know 2 individual examples of people who I don't like what you're doing and that have essentially left. But that's nothing compared to the amount of people that is coming in. It's hands down a big influx of new developers looking at things and essentially no one leaving.
No, but what I mean is if people in other ecosystems are starting to think, maybe there's something to BCH. Well, the first step of that, except for maybe a little bit of chat, but usually not even that, is that they would buy some BCH. They would stock up their own bags a little bit before they started publicizing it more, getting more involved, etc. They got to protect their own financial position first, right? Do you think maybe we're starting to win over? And then of course it's the whole magic of Bitcoin, right? Once somebody is bought in, then they're incentivized to help it keep winning, even if just a little bit. So it's very critical that people start buying in.
Right? I don't think that's what's to expect at all, actually. The amount of people who are going between networks for the sake of financial gain and then shouting from the rooftops about it is a very small clique of people, and not really the people that I find in my social circles or even care about. The people I see coming in, the developers and whatnot, sure, some of them might get some BCH, but they'll probably mostly just get it just so they can try it and do stuff with it. And getting it for the sake of believing in it long term happens much later. The people who get rich are the people who accidentally step into an ecosystem that then explodes.
Yes, exactly. And some of the ones who were there before it was cool and just waited until it eventually exploded. But of course, that's not that. Well, I think it's predictable in the case of BCH, but it's not that predictable in general, right? It's just you've got to believe in something for a long time and be working on. I always think of it kind of as goldfields, being Australian in high school, we always got taught about the goldfields period in Australia, where it was exactly the same thing as crypto. Like, some people were just walking around in the woods and they literally just tripped over these huge gold nuggets that had been lying around there. And then they suddenly were like, I'm rich. And then, of course, that word got around, and then everybody else flooded into, those different rivers and different places where they'd found some gold. And then, of course, a whole ecosystem developed, a whole everything around it. You had obviously people setting up like taverns and people setting up mining, selling mining equipment. It was literally exactly the same thing. And all these people were then coming in, immigrating to Australia to try and get rich, or moving to where the gold fields were, right? And this was such a big thing, and it's a big part of Australian history. And so then when we were in school, we literally spent like a whole term, I think 3 months probably, just studying about the history of this. And that included a practical thing. So we actually went out on a sort of school camp and spent a whole day where we all had to basically pretend, role play as if we were in the gold fields, and they spray painted some rocks with like gold paint and scattered them around. And then you could grab some, and then they had a shop and you could buy, different equipment, right? And my mate, sneaky fucker that he is, he decided to work at the shop. He said, no, don't worry. I'm not going to go looking for rocks. I'll be the shopkeeper. And then he got busted by the teacher because he started stealing money from the shop as the shop attendant. And the best bit about it was that the teacher kind of had to discipline him a bit because, that was a bit out of line. But he didn't really give him that much of a punishment, because I think the teacher kind of appreciated that was actually very true to life. that was exactly the kind of Goldfields vibe. Anyway, that's a long tangent, but the point is that the way to get rich in a gold rush is to be there selling shovels, right? And you can't be there. It's not like the gold rush starts in Ballarat and then you move to Ballarat and set everything up. No, you already have to be in Ballarat getting everything set up. And then the word gets out, Ballarat's where the gold is. Everyone pours in. And if you're already there and set up, you benefit, right? So it's just the same with BCH.
It's actually, it's very similar to the design of Bitcoin and the subsidy. Right, the subsidy Bitcoin was essentially designed as an incentive mechanic to create that kind of gold rush, to create an ecosystem and the business around the creation of the mining equipment and everything related to it. And it's also very much like the gold rush, right? The first time someone screams and say, "Oh, there's a ton of gold here," a lot of people run. Some get rich, most don't. The second time a bunch of the people who aren't already rich run there, very few of them find something, get rich, most of them don't. And each time you do that, fewer people, have motivation left to go try their luck. And eventually you start screaming and no one comes along, right? And so this is effectively what the Bitcoin subsidy versus all the other coins subsidy is. Like, now, if you make a new coin today, you have to prove and demonstrate your value first. You can't just make a subsidy and the entire world will come and fight for it, because most people don't.
It's already happened enough times. Everyone's seen the pattern. Everyone's caught on to how this scam works, basically. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting dynamic that we have there. But I think that historical lesson always stayed with me, and maybe that was one of the reasons that I was so quick to pick up on Bitcoin. It's always funny when you connect the dots backwards, and you realize that you already had the prerequisite knowledge for it. But in that sense, let me ask you then about the inflation schedule. A lot of people have this weird, not actually in the BCH ecosystem, but outside of it, a lot of people say, oh, we've got 100+ years until the subsidy runs out, 2,140, we've got ages, and that's kind of how they justify not having any solutions to the security budget issue. And I've seen more and more people asking the BCH community, what is your solution to the security budget issue? Of course, the solution is we've got to get 8 billion people doing 5 transactions per day, 40 billion transactions per day at 1 cent or less adds up to tens of millions of dollars per day in mining reward, and it's all good. But of course, if we don't drive that demand, then the project just essentially fails. I mean, it will depend how badly we miss on that target, right? But in essence, that's the plan, and we have to be cognizant and aware that if we can't drive actually massive global scale demand, then the incentive structure doesn't work out, right? And I've had to answer a couple of questions on Twitter about that, and I've had a couple of people write back and say like, wow, it's really good that you guys are both aware of that and upfront about it, instead of trying to sort of hand wave it away with this like, we've got 100 years, which is not true, because the inflation rate diminishes exponentially, right? It cuts in half every time. So it's already by like there'll be another halving 2028, 2032, and then maybe by 2036, things are already getting down to like the last 1% of the Bitcoin supply or less, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I think the rate is going to be that super important. I mean, all you need is a doubling of value every 4 years, and that rate cancels itself out. And a doubling in value every 4 years, well, early Bitcoin years, we made like, 19x between 4 years. It's lower now, of course, but I think for quite some time more, a doubling is feasible. And so I don't think the reduced rate is going to be that impactful. But I do agree with you that people who hand wave away the security budget perspective is doing themselves a disservice. And people who say we can just deal with it later is also doing themselves a real serious disservice. Because what you need to do is you need to make the transactions valuable so that people are willing to pay for them. And as you said, in Bitcoin Cash, the goal is to make them plentiful and valuable. And in other blockchains, the goals makes different trade-offs. I can see how for Bitcoin with a speculative price improvement, the way they have the idea to have it as a fiat escape hatch, essentially to get away from the money printer, is going to work out fairly well with high fees and fewer transactions for a while. I think it's on the edge of being sensible now, and in a couple of years it's probably going to be pretty bad. But as long as people get sufficiently rich from holding, they can afford to pay sufficiently high fees to cover that budget.
Yeah, okay. All right, interesting. And I'm wondering if you have any insight or thoughts on the development of the dev tooling as well in BCH. That's something that we've touched on the show a couple of times recently, Cash Script and all that. And you're obviously in the weeds, quite close to a lot of this stuff in that pipeline between changes going into the protocol, then getting into the tooling, and then being buildable into an app with BCH Bull. So, and a lot of the changes have actually been driven by the difficulties that you guys have had over the years. So I wonder if you can speak to, in 2025, are we still seeing a big improvement, steady upwards rate of improvement in those tools? Yeah. And is that also what's driving the increased developer interest?
Well, the tools are getting better, absolutely. And I can expect that to continue. I know that the people behind Cash Script are actively working to stay on the edge of what's capable and push that frontier forward. I also know that Matthew and Roscoe are pretty proud of what they have managed to achieve with Cash Script, to the point where, last week, a couple of days ago, Matthew pointed out, here how some different languages in competing systems look like, and which one do you like the most? It's pretty obvious from those examples that Cash Script is ahead of the curve. There's still more to do, right? There's still a lot better you can get, and with all the consistent improvements to the virtual machine in Bitcoin Cash, there's going to continue to be things to do better. But yeah, the tooling is getting better. Now, I'll add a little bit of a disclaimer here. So if we go back maybe 5 years, a lot of the improvements in tooling were driven by demand from general protocols. We needed things to work out in a specific way for us to grow the NHedge protocol and later release the BCH Bull. Today, we are not the driver of CashScript or of indexing services or most other things. We are still driving for the native wallet developments and what we're doing in-house with the XO stack. And once that gets out, you'll probably see some quite nice things. But most of the improvements happening in the ecosystem today are actually not driven by our needs anymore.
Damn. So who's driving it then?
I actually have no idea.
That's decentralization for you, but it's probably, I mean, it's just the aggregate of all the different people who are coming into the space and the various different projects. Basically, things have diversified from where we were 3 or 4 years ago, where BCH Bull was one of a handful, or well, it wasn't even existed. AnyHedge General Protocols was one of a handful of significant operations at that time, right? So that's just seems like we're moving in the right direction.
I can't keep track of all the things that are happening in the space anymore. It's too much. So go back 5-7 years, and I had full knowledge of essentially everything going on in the space because everyone was so close to each other. But ever since the cash tokens expansion, there's been so many different new actors, and I haven't had a direct need to follow up on every single one of them. So people kind of do their own thing, and together we achieve success.
Yes, amazing. And just quickly on that point about Matthew doing some tweets, I've been loving his stuff recently. He's been a bit spicier on Twitter, which I think is good because I've backed things off a little bit. I've been a bit more conciliatory in general, and so Matthew's clearly kicking it up. He's been a bit on the edge. he's been trying to stir up a little bit of trouble, and it's been working. It's been getting actually a lot of visibility. He's doing a great job of riding that line. But everybody who has been regularly commenting on Twitter and so forth, the change in the discussion is just massive, and it's the result of all just those small day after day after day of people having good conversations. And I really like when I come onto some other thread that I go a bit out of my way. I'm a few levels deep in some chat, and then I see other BCHs already making really quality comments. It's great to see. So I think we're doing well on the social media front. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. I also, it used to be like me and Emergent. That's essentially the people I saw on Twitter. And then lately it's been quite a lot more people. And I think Jason's popping off on his own as well, having tons of discussions in different ways.
He's crazy because he just writes up like a whole huge thing, and then nobody else is really in a position to argue with him because nobody else can really process all of what he said and all the implications and everything. It would be really good if some other, I don't know, well, there aren't really that many BTC devs that would even be at his level anyway, but maybe a couple of the ETH guys or something. It would be kind of interesting if they got a bit involved. So there was a bit of back and forth there, but there's not really too many people that can even discuss with you.
Yeah, so what Jason's going right now is touching the edges of multiple different fields. And so if you want to find people who can actually hold a meaningful conversation with him, you'd essentially have to go to like the newest privacy-oriented blockchains and their consensus teams to figure out like what weird stuff are you doing and how does all this math work.
There's not many of those people, basically. And they're probably not spending their time talking to Jason, which is a shame. I wish they would.
Yeah, it's also getting on the from my perspective, like there are some things that are fairly straightforward and that I understand quite well. The introspection upgrade I understood perfectly through and through. The cash tokens, it took me a while, but I eventually got there, and I'm feeling comfortable with it. But the thing Jason is doing and pushing for now, it simply requires better experts in our fields in order to do review, right?
Yes.
So I wonder how we're going to conjure more experts. I know that when we initially discussed doing the dynamic block size upgrade, there were people in other blockchains who came over simply because it was interesting and contributed and helped make it be the best that it could be. And so I'm hoping that is what's going to happen when Jason pushes this forward too, that we're going to get these zero knowledge guys who are right there at the edge and doing good work to come and say that, hey, the thing over here is also cool, and if you do it in this way, it'll get even better, and then we get discussions going.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it works, right? Once you are on the cutting edge, by definition, the people who are on the cutting edge want to be involved in that. So if you're the ones doing it, then it kind of drags them in by default, and then your community grows, and then they push each other even further, and everything accelerates and compounds, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm feeling good about all that. So speaking of attracting some experts, let's talk about Bliss. So I was shilling it on the last show. I'm going to be shilling it on basically every show until it comes up, although it won't always be a dedicated segment. But you, of course, created Bliss, the whole thing. You founded the initial idea, which we announced it in January of 2024, but we'd been talking about it a little bit earlier than that for a couple months, right? So back to 2023, and we're now in 2025. So I'm just wondering if you have, in hindsight, after thinking back on Bliss 2024, how was it? Did you feel in hindsight it achieved kind of what your original vision was? And what did you take from that whole experience with a bit of time to look back on it?
Yeah, so I think it was great. I think as a conference, there are things that could have gone better. But as a gathering of developers in a single space and having discussions and moving forward with collaborations, it has turned out fantastic. And we're still to this day seeing the fruits of that labor. So yeah, it's very rewarding to know that what we did was meaningful and impactful to the people who came.
Yeah, and during the actual event itself, was there anything that surprised you, or that you can say in regards to what was the experience like of actually, running the event, right? I don't know how much experience you have running events in the moment like that. I certainly haven't. I mean, I've run house parties, but I've never run an actual official event like that,
I had no experience at all, and to date, Bliss is the only experience I do have in this field. What surprised me? Not much. I was way too busy to be surprised while I was there. There was one thing that did surprise me, and that was when Roscoe just took a bunch of tables and made a big workshop in the middle of the open floor to showcase how to build stuff with CashScript. That was kind of amazing to see, and very, very popular from what I heard.
Yes. I mean, for me, I was quite surprised in the sense that I was unbelievably busy, the whole time in between doing the hosting on stage and making sure everyone was lined up for the next thing that was going to happen. I did some side content. I obviously talked to loads of different people and all that, had to eat and sleep and all that, did all that. But I still actually had time to go out and have drinks and everything. And somehow I just operated on about 5 or 6 hours sleep for that like 3 or 4 days. And it all worked out great. So actually, I'm so excited to do it again this year because it was actually a lot of fun. And yeah, really, while it's going, you don't have time to think about anything else. And then just before you know it, it's all over. But I was not surprised that everybody had an absolute blast because I did. And if I hadn't been, involved in so much else going on, that would have just been even better. I would have been less stressed about it. So I've been surprised about that. Okay, so then after 2024, it took a little bit of time to reflect. We came back and discussed about running it again. What was that process like?
The process itself? No, it's just a decision. We just decided that we're going to do it. And we are. Yeah. And so what was the game plan moving forward then, right? Obviously each year we've got to try and update and do a little better than we did last year. So what's the focus this time around? Right. So last year the focus from my perspective while organizing things was going to be on making the people proud, right? Like making sure that we celebrate all the things we have achieved thus far, and then looking at like, okay, and where are we now? For 2025, I'll leave the past in the past mostly, and instead have a more forward-looking sense and ask like, where are we going and what can we do today? What kind of projects can you start today? What capabilities and features do you have at your fingertips? And where could you go with that if you wanted to? There's also some differences in like just in organizational matters. We learned from last year that having very long days means that at the end of the days, people don't have as much attention to just sit still and, being lectured. And so for 2025, we're doing 3 days instead of 2 and having slightly shorter days. We will, of course, still have a bunch of social activities and whatnot. So it's probably going to be morning to night this time too. No worries about that. But the more formal content is getting a little bit more stretched out so that people can keep attention up for the entire event.
Yeah, there is a lot of it though. Like I was sort of championing that move to 3 days because I felt like, we could up the ante and do a little bit bigger and better this year. And then when I was looking at the schedule that we have, it's still a little bit in flux, but I was like, wow, there's going to be 11 talks. And we've got 2 panels plus potentially something in that vein in the upgrade celebration as well. So 3 panels and 11 talks. That's a lot of Bitcoin Cash. Plus, obviously, we have extra time for the open house. It's going to be great. I'm so excited.
Yeah, at the same time, do take it in consideration that last year, the price of a ticket was 0.75 BCH, and this year it's only 0.5, so it's cheaper in terms of BCH, and there's so much more value you get out of it.
Yes.
One more thing that was missed last year is that the people who were going for the social events in the evening, we had not organized food for dinners. And so people kind of scattered out trying to find, what suits them best, and then ended up not always joining up as intended afterwards. So that's also a lesson learned. And so for all the people involved in the after hours social events, we have included dinners for those.
Yes, we have we even included, I thought we might have included dinners for literally everyone, right? All the all the ticket holders this year, or do I have that wrong?
I think you have that wrong, actually.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll double check that. But either way, so you're talking there about the builder tickets. So just obviously some of the listers, some of them if you have a builder ticket, you'll know about it. You'll have been in contact with Jonathan, or you have been, discussing there. If you just went on TapSwap and bought a Velma, then that wouldn't include you. But on that note, I am also on a bit of a mission to try and expand some of the social stuff and even just the influence of BCH, right? I've been posting about it a little bit on Twitter. I think we need to find fresh inspiration and find ways to include new communities and new ways to advertise and expand the BCH community to more people outside of just shilling away in crypto. Like, it's great that we're doing a good job of that, but that's not enough. And ultimately we'll really get noticed if we are bringing in people who otherwise wouldn't have been interested in cryptocurrency or in Bitcoin otherwise. So my plan this year for Bliss is that we're going to have my mate Alex, who is a bachata teacher who I onboarded to BCH and paid him for many lessons in, I don't know, I guess more than a year ago at this point, and he's a regular listener of the show, and he's got quite keen about it. So he's going to come with his dance partner, and they're going to teach bachata classes in the evening. Now, this one has a special rule, which is that it's a ladies' event. So the women that are there can each bring a dance partner. So guys, if you're buying tickets to Bliss, get your girlfriend, get your wife, convince a friend, whoever, that this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and then get them a Velma and come along so that you can be part of that. That will be open to anyone, not the builders, not like just the builders. Anyone who has a Velma can do bachata, but you have to have a dance partner, and it's got to be one guy, one girl. So I actually need to sort out something for that, but I know already a ton of people were planning something in that regard, and we will have Alex on the show, not the next episode, but probably the episode after, to explain all the details of that. I'm super excited about this collaboration between the BCH scene and the bachata scene. The letters even line up perfectly, so I feel like it's a bit of a match made in heaven. So I'm looking forward to seeing your dance moves, Jonathan. Are we going to be seeing some of that?
I'll try to bring my better half with me, and we'll see what happens.
All right, perfect. That's the spirit. Jet, you're gonna bust out a few moves. Okay, all right. Okay, you need to be talked into it. So we'll have to just make sure we get the beers started before the bachata, and then we'll roll one into the other. I'm glad I have heads up about that.
There's a good chance this will be a solo trip for me. So.
Okay. All right.
Not only am I not comfortable dancing, but dancing with a stranger is not going to happen.
We'll see. That's what they all say. That's how everyone starts out, but it all works out in the end. You wait till you hear Alex talk about it. You'll be fired up. He's very, very passionate about what he does. Okay, so all that is to say, the tickets are obviously on sale. You can go to bliss.cash and find all the links and information there. The actual tickets are on tapswap.cash, but it's linked from bliss.cash. We've got videos showing you how to buy the ticket if you don't know how to do that. We also now have a link to the hotel bookings so that you can do that. You have to put in credit card information, but it doesn't charge you, and then you can pay at the venue in BCH. And I believe that that's coming with a discount on the food, right, Jonathan, as well too. So it's a good deal.
Discount on the room. I think it's like
yes.
to 10%. But it also includes breakfast, which is kind of the big deal. And the breakfast at the venue is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. That was one of the highlights last year. As I've said before, you also said you might have some news about Bliss. I don't know if you already said it or if you have an announcement
This kind of goes back to the, how did Bliss 2024 actually go? And I said, we're still seeing to this day the fallout of BLISS 2024. And so earlier today, I was informed that there is going to be a project unveil ready for BLISS 2025 for a new DeFi project that has some roots in discussions that happened or connections that were made during BLISS 2024. And so I'm looking forward to share that news in full when it's time for it. But it's the kind of things that BLISS 2024 was a networking event where people who really care about bringing peer-to-peer cash for the world came together, and there are numerous collaborations and improvement that have happened as a result of the discussions and introductions that were made at BLISS.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds really exciting. I actually had no idea what you just told me to ask about some news. I actually had no idea that it was going to be a new project unveil at BLISS 25. That sounds super hype, and it's got to be people who are deep in the ecosystem if they were there the first time around. So that sounds like it's going to be. That sounds like it's going to be something good. I'm looking forward to that. And it's now February, so you have, obviously, the event is in May, so we're going to be ramping up the marketing, I'd say, this month to try and get the ticket sales out there. I think we've already got some of the information out there, but it's now going to be time to kick up the marketing and visibility. On that note, if anybody has any particularly amazing marketing ideas, feel free to get in touch with me on Twitter or on Telegram. Because we do actually have some spare funds that we're considering how best to spend that on our marketing this year. And speaking of that, we got to give a shout out to our sponsors for BLISS 2025, one of our deliverables. So thank you very much to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, Commercial Kitchen Stop, Ravish Off Ocean, BCH Bull, Mini Satoshi, Molecular Turek, and BLISS 2024 for sponsoring this year's event, because we couldn't do it without you. Good that BLISS 2024 made the list as well too. We reinvested our proceeds from last year in this year, right? So we got to try and sell out this year so that then it propels it forward year after year. So thank you very much to those sponsors, and everybody should check out all of them: the BCH podcast, Commercial Kitchen Stop, Ravish Off Ocean, BCH Bull, Mini Satoshi, Molecular, and Turek. Okay, I think that's enough about BLISS, unless you got anything else you think I missed and want to add.
One minor note: if you want a ticket but you do not have BCH, or you do not have a BCH wallet capable of managing cash tokens and doing Wallet Connect, then you can contact us for a different payment arrangement, and we will sort out and hand deliver a ticket on a card to you when you get there.
Yes. If you don't understand, yeah. And I've seen that a little bit. The community is also very, very friendly. If you are asking, how do I buy a ticket? How does this all work? I don't really understand, the video, or how does cash tokens work, or just double checking that you're buying the right thing, or where do I get some BCH? There's different exchanges in different areas of the world. Then, yeah, all that, you can get help from the community, or you can come and talk to us directly, and we will obviously help you out with that. Okay, so speaking of the upgrade, which in this case, the Velma upgrade, we've been talking on the show about the 2025 upgrade with Velma. That's already locked in. That's already ready to go. And at BLISS, we will probably be talking about we'll definitely be talking about the 2026 chips that Jason Dreisner has proposed, but he's upping the ante once again, and he's already released a chip for 2027. It's Transaction V5, which is to give us 0 overhead covenants, detached cross-input signatures, comprehensive malleability protection, efficient covenant UTXO recycling, fractional Satoshis, and fractional cash tokens. He unveiled this just a couple of days ago and got some immediate sort of pushback and consternation about the difficulties of a new transaction version, whether it could be split up into different pieces and so forth. And he gave a very big rundown of all this on Fiendish and Friends number 11. So if anybody wants to get all of Jason's explanation of it, I highly recommend you go and check out that. But from your point of view, Jonathan, what did you make of this new chip and even just the element of having 2027 upgrades already on the cards, chip process working as intended, right?
I mean, it's great that we can see it well ahead of time. And it's great that he's doing long-term work. Of course, these chips will see changes before they end up going anywhere. But there is also a very long time for those changes to happen. I think it's a bit sad to me that we're seeing so many good consensus and virtual machine improvements, but not so many profitable, sustainable businesses building on them. But at the same time, not everyone enjoys doing all potential tasks in life. And so it's not on Jason to build all the great companies that are profitable and sustainable. That's on the business people to team up with other people and so on. I wish secretly to have like a 15 pack of Jason somewhere in the corner that we could, bring in to build some businesses and make the stuff be beneficial. For every one Jason, we have to do consensus work. 15 Jasons would be good to have building businesses.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a delay, right? So that's also one thing that when I talk about the BCH stack, right? And you have to start first, you have to get the upgrades in at the protocol layer. Then it takes a little while for those to kind of play out as people have discussed them and they lock in and then they go live. And then the tooling gets over the top of that. And then somebody sees the idea for a product and then they make a very early stage product and then that goes well or it doesn't. And then that turns into a later stage product, right? So I'm sure by 2027 we're going to have all kinds of projects in the space, but the protocol upgrades, because they involve the whole ecosystem, they have like a very long runway to run out. I mean, I personally was a little bit sort of cheesed off, and I was debating with people in Telegram about the fact that Jason put this work out, and then some people were immediately, their reaction was, we can't do this, it's too difficult, there's too many problems, etc., when the whole idea is that if you're proposing something way ahead of time, there's tons of time for it to all be discussed, all be iterated. In a way, I was glad, because I'm like, well, if people can get it out of their system right now, then obviously the discussion will become
this is a great
over time.
point.
Yeah.
This is a great point. One of the values of doing it a long time ahead of time, and one of the key important parts of the chip process is doing it ahead of time, is so that any tension or pushback gets surfaced, and so that people can have good expectations of what is about to happen. Now, just writing a chip does not guarantee that anything actually ends up in consensus, right? It's just a tool to gain consensus. And when I look at the chips and see the pushback that, this is very difficult things, we can't do them, then what I'm hearing here is very difficult things. I'm glad we get to deal with and do the difficult things without having something of a time frame that's very short, without having the stresses and presses of, we have to achieve consensus on this in 4 months, and if you don't agree with me, then I'm gonna slap you with a wet trout or something. So,
yes. No wet trout.
I like that they're coming out. I like that they are high difficulty things. The best improvements we can get aren't going to be the very easy and simple ones, right? Opcat only gets you so far.
Bit of shade here on that being a nice, easy upgrade to get in, but
Yeah, I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
no. Go ahead, mate. This is absolutely the show for it. But you know, when you come to that, on like Jason said, basically, that this 2027 upgrade was like the reverse half of the Pareto principle, right? So in his mind, or in his explanation, in 2026, with loops, op eval, and pay to script, he says that's like the 20% of the work that gets the 80% of the benefits in terms of cleaning up the rest of the VM, right? So that it will be ready for sort of zero knowledge experimentation, so that our contracts are more efficient than anyone else, and so forth. And then this 2027 chipped transaction V5 was the other half, right? So it was the 20% of the benefit for the 80% of the work. So in one sense, that means it's already, well, that's why it's coming later, because it's less important. But also, I don't think people should confuse that with, okay, that means we shouldn't not do it. Like, it still like seems like if it all went well, it would be a big benefit. But one of the things he's mentioned is that he will not be pushing hard for this, basically, unless BCH gets into the top 10 coins on the coin market cap rankings, because if we do an upgrade like this with a transaction version upgrade, is a very big deal. A lot of the ecosystem would need to upgrade, not just the nodes or not even just the wallets, but potentially everyone who had any kind of BCH integration. So he wants BCH to be big enough that if we do an upgrade that breaks people's integration, they aren't forced into the choice of, do I upgrade, or do I just think I'm just going to, you know, cut off BCH from my service? And a lot of people would cut it off, right? If it was still small, if there wasn't loads of users and activity, they might just think, okay, never mind. But if Ethereum does a big upgrade, everybody's like, okay, we can't afford to throw out, 30% of our customer base or something. So we're going to, do the work to make the upgrade a reality. So that's actually quite interesting, because I never heard him make any comments about that before, where he would think that chips were related to our market cap or anything like that. But it does make sense potentially in this controversial case where it would be quite onerous, right?
There's a lot to say on this topic. So the first thing I'll say is that his making a likeness between the Pareto principle and this one is just a likeness, right? It's not the exact numbers. And in fact, if we go from some of the conversations I've read after that, some people even argue that, hey, yeah, no, the native introspection side were actually the 80% benefit for 20% of work, and this is like the third line in, so it's like almost no benefit at all and extreme amount of work. But I'll take a bit of a different approach. And I'll say that if you have like 100 users pushing on your network and doing stuff, and you can do a change that, like, you'll spend 20% of the effort to get 80% of the benefit, you might do that even though you only have 100 users, and those users might not be high paying or whatnot. If you have 10,000 users and they are rich dudes paying a lot of money, then you have no reason not to do the inverse Pareto, because that 20% benefit is going to be so valuable, and the 80% work, again, it's 80% compared to other things you could have done. But when you're looking at a global payment network aiming to have 10 transactions per person for 10 billion people per day, then even like someone said, the Pareto of the Pareto, the 2% for 98% of the work, whatever that is, that might still make sense. At that scale, the benefit to those 10 billion users might be in aggregate so large that you can afford a pretty big thing. And I think this is more the part that I think matters more. I mean, look at what he proposed, right? The fractional Satoshis and cash tokens. We know
That's huge.
fractional Satoshis is going to be a requirement in the future if we grow to the scale that we want to be in, right? It needs to be done at some point. Otherwise, we can't denominate things, right? You can't have a small enough unit to describe sensible value. So I think it's great that he's putting it forward. And I know that there's going to be more discussion. And most likely, in my opinion, this specific chip is going to get abandoned, and some other chips is going to replace it with either more focused approach on specific parts, or because there are lessons learned from this discussion that is happening that can inform and make better chips in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's also quite likely. But like you say, I mean, on this list, the zero overhead covenants, okay, a bit of a nice to have, I'd say, but fractional Satoshis, absolutely huge. People have already we've mentioned it on this show several times. For sure, somebody's going to have to figure out a way to do that. And this might be one of the proposals. Fractional cash tokens also potentially too quite relevant if our DeFi ecosystem is growing well. People certainly love to do tokens with 10 trillion supply instead of just like 1 million coins or something. That's just a bug in human psychology, basically.
Don't underestimate the value of the detached signatures, though. I think that is also one of the really big things. Now that we're entering the cash tokens era for Bitcoin Cash, we might start to see wallets where spending requirements are not going to be signed with a key, right? It's going to be like presence of a token or some other things. And I expect there to be contract that has a very large number of UTXOs on them, where with a detached signature, you can get a lot of scalability out of it that you can't otherwise.
I mean, speaking of that, the BCH gurus just paid their dividends for the last quarter. I saw today it was about 9 cents per guru that people held, and they just paid it all in one transaction. Like, there's just pages and pages and pages of the output. I don't know how many people that was, but it's certainly in the hundreds. So is that kind of the case that you're talking about, like giant cash fusions or that kind of payout to hundreds of people?
Well, not the amount of different entities you send to, but rather the number of coins locked by the same lock script.
Right. Okay.
So,
So if you received on an address,
and I get a payout to each of my guru, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, it has more to do with the input side than the output side.
Right. Okay. All right. So I've got my address, my donation address. 10,000 people send me 10 cents each, and I just want to, bundle them all up one time, save myself a ton of space. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely sounds like a winner. What do you think? Okay, so that was the 2027 chip we've been talking about, which is a bit more speculative. There's also obviously been ongoing chat about loops, op eval, and pay to script. Do you have any takes on any of them?
I should have, but I actually really don't. I've read what people are saying, and I followed the discussion a bit. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't see it as pressing or super required, but I do see value in it. I think the op-eval, the differences between the way Jason is doing it and how some other people think it should be done is interesting. But in the end, I'm all for getting some kind of loops. Loops is going to add significant value. I also, I read something Matthew wrote a while ago that like once we have loops, then we can start adding array-like features to cash script. And the amount of arrays I work with otherwise are quite high. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some kind of loops, and I'll leave it to people who have stronger opinions to help flesh out a good consensus set there.
Yeah, it seems to me like what I kind of said on the show when we talked about this, I don't know, a couple episodes back, is bearing out. Loops doesn't really seem that controversial. Everybody kind of thinks, yeah, love it, want this. There's basically a fairly obvious correct way to do it. Let's do it. We all want it. It would be great, right? So that one doesn't seem to be getting too much controversy. Everyone wants it, and nobody's too stressed about how it's done, as far as I've seen. Op eval has been quite a bit more contentious, and there's been more discussion. I'm certainly not up on all the latest back and forth about it, but it certainly seems more contentious. And then pay to script sort of is falling through the cracks a bit with, I haven't seen people taking a strong stance one way or another, which I would guess means that everybody isn't really quite sure exactly what it does or what the benefit is.
Yeah, so this is the point where, if you're listening, what would be really helpful to have more practical use cases for the various numbers of chips you make. I know that we do get explanations, but they are generalized. I would like to see practical applications, actual example, runnable code that demonstrates the value of some of these things.
Well, he did that with JetX, right? With the VM limits and cash tokens. So that also, created a lot of interest, right?
Yes, though JetX hasn't been deployed. It's not really public still. I mean, it's supposed to be working, but no one has actually sat down and built an exchange around it. And I think it's cool, and I think it demonstrates some value, but it's hard to judge how valuable it is. It's much easier to judge, for example, the value of any hedge. It's 28,000 or so TVL for BCH and TVL.
Yes.
It's clear to point at that and say, hey, introspection had a massive amount of value. I'm sure many of these things are going to have similar things you can point to in the future, when we have that, to be able to do that in retrospect. But I would like to have more practical examples demonstrating the value of many of the upgrades.
Yes, completely agreed on this. I mean, I have just been a little bit blown away that Jason even came out with this chip, because for a 2020, it's literally February, or it was just January of 2025, right? And we're already talking about 2027, which is 2.5 years away, that it would potentially ship in May. And even in this case, it was a contingent on a lot of other factors on top of that. So the time horizon is just getting further and further out, right? Which is a great thing, because it's a sign of maturity, like I've talked about in the BCH scene, that when you're doing badly, everybody's worried about what are we doing today, and maybe what are we doing tomorrow, right? And then once you've got things a little bit more stabilized, then you can start planning for the next 3 months, and then after that 6 months, and then a year, and now we're at 2 years, 2.5 years almost. It sort of feels like by next year, 2026, maybe will be kind of okay, these are the 2027 chips. We've got these speculative ones for 2028, and maybe for 2029, there's the very rough working. So in that way, the BCH community is coming to a kind of quite long-term roadmap, but without any centralized party dictating this is what's on it and this is what's a priority, which is really quite amazing to see, I think.
I'll disagree with the roadmap side. I think the chips we're seeing that are very long time frame here, they are rather unlikely to actually go in, right? As I said earlier, I think they will be superseded by different chips, either smaller or better, or smaller and better.
Yes.
So this is exploratory work in the form of a chip, rather than in the form of some other discussion. And I like it. I like it because it adds sufficient technical detail and gives a clear enough specification that you can talk about the details without having to be too generic. Instead of asking the question, should we add loops? The question becomes, should we add loops that functions in this specific manner? And if not, let's have a detailed discussion about it. It's forcing detailed discussion ahead of time. It's great. But it's not a roadmap. It's to be mistaken for a roadmap. It's
People are well. I mean, people get very finicky about this word roadmap. Why does that provoke such a strong reaction in you that it's not a roadmap?
But because a roadmap means that someone knows, right? It means that someone has decided. But
Well,
in
yes
order
and
for it to be a
no.
roadmap, we kind of have to agree on it. And the point of the discussion here is to determine what we agree. So it can't be a roadmap until we have agreed on it. But
I mean, I think of a roadmap just as like a
it's
path.
good to see what could be in the future. I call it a branching tree of potential
vision.
future, whatever.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just happy that some people feel that BCH is stable enough and valuable enough to work on this long term, right? You don't sit
Yes.
down and make multi-year chip suggestions for something that you don't know if it's going to be here 6 months later, right?
Yes.
And there was a period in BCH's past where you essentially never knew, right? Right after the 2007 split, there was no guarantees that BCH was going to stay around for a long time. And then you had the Satoshi's Vision split and no idea how that was going to turn out. And then we kicked out the ABC team. And we had, like, I think Unum has said this a couple times. For a while there, we had a disaster every second year.
Yes.
And that
But
pattern
we got
has
out
now
of
been
2024. Yeah, we got out of 2024
Yeah.
with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and because that pattern is broken, it means that people can take a longer term perspective on things.
Yes, very true. I mean, I find it interesting because I understand that people are somewhat allergic to this word roadmap because in their mind it conjures up the idea of so many other cryptocurrencies who have a foundation. They have this one or two guys who publish the roadmap. This is what we're going to be doing over the next few years. Justin Drake says we're going to do the beam chain for 5 years and everyone goes ballistic. You know, like it's not like that. But I'm just saying we have a kind of emergent process that is at least putting signposts, because even a centralized roadmap still is subject to change. It's like you go, okay, we're very confident that in the next 6 months we're going to do this, and then in the next 1 year probably this, and in the next 2 years maybe this, and in the next 5 years kind of some vague ideas of like where we're going, right? I feel like we're coming to that same thing, but without, because anybody can add something to the quote unquote roadmap by publishing a chip and making it a serious discussion, basically, like you were talking about.
I hear you, and I've been saying the same things, right? So I'm no different, but from my viewpoint, I would actually have expected that UTXO commitments would have been here by now. It's been on the roadmap for so long, so to speak.
Yes, well, sort of. I mean, it was
a shift for it. We had an implementation for it, and it's not here. In consensus yet. So I'm gonna be a bit reserved and say that these 2026 and 2027 chips from Jason, they are suggestions from Jason about what to do. They are specific and they are valuable to discuss. Let's discuss them. And if we do come to consensus, then we'll of course just implement all the good stuff. And if not, well, then we know.
Yes. I mean, I think the point about UTXO commitments is an interesting one because we talked about that. That was one of the talks last year at Bliss. Actually, one of the talks that I personally was most interested in because I also feel like I've said before on this show, you know, fractional Satoshis, UTXO commitments, and quantum resistance are the three things that probably over the next 5 years I want to see BCH, you know, ship some answers for. Why do you think that UTXO commitment stuff hasn't been trending? Is it just because we don't need it as much? Because, you know, we haven't driven, like if volume was growing quite significantly already, people would think, okay, we need this extra scalability upgrade, relatively speaking. Or if the reason that we aren't having that is because we aren't seeing a huge amount of transactions on chain. So people think we got to pack more power in, which is why we're getting these other VM focused upgrades.
I think you pretty much hit the nail there. It's not urgent. UTXO commitments deliver the most value when the UTXO set is very, very large. And our UTXO set isn't very, very large. There is also like discussions about different ways to implement the UTXO commitments. And I know that there are a simpler version that provides less valuable outcomes, and then there's a more complex version that provides more valuable outcomes, but has negative scaling implications. And so I think the first version, the one that Verde did, is the one that's slightly more complicated because we wanted to get all the good stuff. But it turns out that the scalability of that solution has some drawbacks, and so a simpler version might need to be built and evaluated. But the big deal, of course, is that it's not urgent. If we had like an ever increasing number of transactions creating an ever larger UTXO set on chain today, then it would be more urgent. But we have like it goes ups and down. If you look at the 2027 ships, there's even suggestions on how to, like I said, efficient covenant UTXO recycling you have up there, like how to reduce the UTXO set.
Yes. Well, that's it. You know, you don't want to like premature optimization is the root of all evil, right? That's what they say in software development. So we don't want to kind of pull the trigger too fast on the UTXO stuff if we can afford to let that play out. But it will just be interesting to see at what point does that kind of become.
I still want it. UTXO commitment is number 2 and number 3 on my personal wish list. Graphene or a even better block propagation protocol is also high up on my list, and it's also one of the things that aren't urgent at this point.
That's not really a consensus thing, though, right? Do you need a consensus changes for graphene?
It's not consensus, but it's a technical thing that requires
someone has to work on it.
Cooperate.
Yeah,
someone has to do it.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, I'm sure there'll be tons of chat about all of this at Bliss, right? So if you've been...
Absolutely. If you want to talk about the consensus and what's going to come in the future, and you want to make sure that your future is the one that happens, you should come to Bliss and tell everyone why your future is the best future.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, we've got Steve Thurmond jumped in the chat and said, I'll be giving away cash stamps, $500 to one lucky recipient via raffle at Bliss. So there you go. Yet another reason. It's kind of amazing, actually, when you run an event like that and then everybody starts kind of pitching in their own contributions, like you said, with Roscoe running his workshop, and then now these cash stamps. And so who knows how many different things are going to be going on there, but you've got to be there to be involved.
That getting a lottery ticket is a good reason to come to Bliss, but of course it's a bit of icing on the cake.
Exactly.
I'm going to add more icing on the cake. We have some airdrops planned that is going to happen at Bliss for those who have a Bliss ticket. So if you like airdrops, then more icing on the cake.
Amazing. Love the icing. Okay, so the other big topic that has been trending in the sort of bigger crypto world the last week or two has been, of course, the arrival of the Trump administration and its impact on the crypto scene. So not only did Trump launch his Trump Solana meme coin, he then followed it with a Melania coin, which did nowhere near as well, but it just goes to show that the grift was kind of very well planned in that sense. Trump administration has started. Ross Ulbricht was freed on the second day of the administration. So technically, Trump broke his promise that he would do it immediately on the first day. But as it kind of worked out, he did sort of mostly deliver, basically. So except for people who are being very pedantic, I think on the most part, people have said, okay, a win's a win on that. And here's a photo of him coming out of jail. He's already got a pot plant that looks like what he had in his cell or in prison or something. And when I saw that, I just felt like he's kind of already back at it. It's like Like he's not even been out of jail for 5 minutes and he's already like growing some new plants with a bit of a cheeky smile on his face too. I'm sure he's glad to be out. Obviously, a momentous kind of moment for crypto, and it does signify really that the winds are changing in the political landscape. The fact that he was able to get out. I don't know. Do you have any take on this Ross Ulbricht release?
Yeah, so I gotta ask a question first. That second day of administration, how
Yes.
many people got wrecked on the futures, like the prediction market?
I don't know. Probably a lot. Probably
Probably a lot. Yeah. Well, I'm happy that Ross is out. He deserves his freedom. He never deserved to be in jail in the first place. I don't know what he could have or could have not done, if he has any dark skeletons in his closet or whatever. But from where I'm standing, it's just a big miscarriage of justice to have him locked up. And it's mostly just a political thing. Having him out is good, like it sends a signal. But from my viewpoint, now is the time to let Ross decide what he wants to do with his life going forward. His life was essentially cut short and he had to figure out a different way to live for a long time. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who now wants his attention. I too, of course, but I will not act on it. If he wants to come on the BCH podcast for some reason, he's more than welcome, and I'll be happy to hear from him. If he wants to come to Bliss, I'll host him. In fact, if he wants to come live with me, I'll host him here too. He's a good guy, but I'll leave it up to Ross to decide what to do from here on forward.
I think that's the first time we've ever had a guest extending invites onto the BCH podcast, but yes, Ross is certainly welcome to come on if he wants. But I mean, I would love to do that. But it's of course I agree with you that I think 1,001 people are going to be badgering him about this, that, and everything. And as I'm also very sure it's going to take him a little while to adjust. Right? There's going to be not only just his psychology in his daily life, but then crypto is crazy enough of an industry when you've been immersed in it for so long, let alone who knows how much information he's had, probably, virtually none on that whole, he was locked up in 2015, I think, right? Or he's done 11 years in prison, so it must have been earlier than that. He was arrested in 2013. Maybe he was locked up in 2014. That's a big change. Do you feel like he's going to come out as a Bcasher, Jonathan? Is he going to read a copy of Hijacking Bitcoin and then say, you know what, guys?
It's clear that back in the days, Ross believed in it as a payment network. He built Silk Road after all, where it was designed and used for payments. I think he is probably going to side with the BTC camp, mostly because that's where his support has been coming from over all these years, both financially and a lot of people. Just look at it. The BCH network effect is much, much larger than BCH's network effect. There is simply going to be more people in that space supporting him than there are in the BCH space. That doesn't mean we care any less for him. I mean, I salute him and thank him for keeping the streets less violent. That's a great thing. But I don't think it's going to come out as a Bcasher like anytime soon. I also think that he has had quite a bit of information even while being locked up. And I think he might not have kept up on development side or even all the consensus changes to Bitcoin, but he's most certainly kept up with the large arc of that story and the growth in price over time. So he knows that when he went to jail, it was a fringe thing. And when he comes out of jail, it's because the president essentially decided to go for crypto.
Yes. Yes, I don't know. Jet, do you have a take? Is he gonna even on a short or even a long term time frame at some point? Is he gonna just be like, look, guys, let's be real here. You know, Bcash is the real Bitcoin.
I think it entirely depends on how much like attention he wants to manage after his release, right? Like the funniest thing that I saw from all of this was like, it was a tweet that said, do you people realize that Trump just sentenced Ulbricht to 30 years of libertarian podcasts? And yeah, I don't think I would want
That's
that.
quite that.
Well, that's
If Ross decides that he is a Bcasher and want to make that clear and known to the world, here's my suggestion. Go find Gavin Andreessen's tweet that said that Bitcoin is both a store of value and an electronic medium of exchange, and retweet that one. That'd be a great way to signal that you are on this side.
To kick the hornet's nest. I mean, I feel like, and obviously this is complete speculation on my part. I'm aware of his story, but I've never met him or interacted with him or anything. But I feel like it's upwards of 95% chance that he will figure out that Bitcoin was hijacked. I can't see him thinking, oh, you know what? I've been in prison and then now it's all about digital gold and Michael Saylor trying to, rig the NASDAQ with it or something and not thinking, what the hell is going on here, guys? Like I'm sure he's probably already figured it out, basically, right? But even if he hasn't, he will read Hijacking Bitcoin, he'll dig into the history, he'll try and figure out what's going on, and he'll figure out the BCH is a real Bitcoin. I think that's close to certainty. But I also don't think he's going to be public about that for the reasons that you guys have said. He's going to firstly think, let me just not get in the mix before I'm too clear on what's going on. You know, you're going to want to get a bit of a lay of the land after getting out. And then also he's going to discover, wait, there's a lot of people, influential, people and stuff going on with BTC. So until he's quite sure, I doubt he would be so risk prone that he would make a big move on that and start making controversial statements until he felt very sure that he'd got a sense of how everything had transpired in his absence, So I guess to me, that's obvious.
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but there's this famous saying that it's very difficult to understand something when your job depends on not understanding it, like where your source of income depends on not understanding it. And I think that the overwhelming support he sees and the amount of donations and money that is coming in, it will simply make it very difficult for him to even consider looking at it in a different way.
I don't know though, because when you say that, but when I saw some tweet about his donation page that he put all the different cryptos, he'd received like $250,000 of BTC, $10,000 of ETH, and like $5 million of Solana meme coins or something like that.
That's the free Ross or the campaign around it. Ross has personal addresses, personal connections, and personal funds. I will not. I can't imagine a situation where he has not received more funds from the old school people than he has from the new Bitcoin world, so to speak,
right.
New crypto
the public donations. Well, maybe who knows one way or the other, or if he had a stash that he still had access to, or not. Who knows? But in that
he probably had a bunch of money on Mt. Gox as well.
The goxing never ends. That needs that like bad luck Brian meme, gets out of jail with a huge stack of Bitcoin. Goxed. Oh man, that would be a shame. Anyway, it seems like he's financially taken care of, but I'll be very interested, because if there's some the most entertaining outcome is the most likely style. If he does get out after having been shilled so hard by so many of the BTC guys, and then he comes out and says, guys, let's be real here, BCH is the real Bitcoin, that would just be titanic. That would shake things up so much, because there would be so much blowback, but he would also be correct. And then there would be so much attention on it, and so many people who had said, oh, he's this great guy, he was this great Bitcoin pioneer, he was, taken out of the game, unfortunately. Like, it plays into his story perfectly if he comes out of prison and says, I was out of the game for 10 years, and so I have a fresh eyes on it, and it's clear that BCH is the real Bitcoin. If he said that, yeah, it would be a monumentous event. So I guess we'll see in 2025 whether it will play out. I'll predict that he won't. I'll predict that he'll think that, but he won't say it. We're not gonna be able to verify that unless he does. But that would be my take on it. But welcome back to the free world, Ross. I'm glad to have you. Glad to have you back in action. Another cypherpunk on the streets. Perfect. Amazing. Right. So then, beside this, Roger Ver also, was in a bit of an unlucky situation where he was potentially getting a lot of momentum for a pardon or people looking into it. And he got even some tweets from Elon, we've discussed on the show before, that he was talking to Elon in 2021. So maybe a bit of their history played into it there. But then Elon said, well, he's not a citizen. So we can't pardon somebody who doesn't have a citizen because membership has its benefits, which is basically nonsense, because the reason he isn't a citizen is because he gave it up to avoid being lawfared, exactly like he has been. So it's pretty unfair to hold that against him. I feel that wasn't really that logical.
It's not only unfair, it's hypocritical, right? What is the United States if not a gang of people who fled England, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And the citizenship part, just because you are or aren't a citizen doesn't mean you are and are not an American, right? If he lived and grew up there, citizenship or not, I'll still argue he's an American. Right.
Well, that's what he argued. He put out some content about that, and clearly he has been very quiet, understandably, during this whole process, because it's basically just a risk to be public when you're already being attacked basically for the fact that you're causing problems with your public presence. But then it really ramped up all of a sudden with different, movies and video clips and stuff like that in this moment where Trump was potentially looking at some executive pardons, which makes sense, because if it was going to happen, that was the time to do it, right?
He wasn't the only one to do that, though, right? There's a ton of different activist groups or not that was more or less harassing Trump to go pardon their favorite hero too. I think it would have been great if there was a pardon for Roger. I'd much rather just have the case turned down and let him go free, and just not have any specific outcome. I also want to complain about the membership aspect from that Elon thing. From my understanding, Roger was absolutely a member of the United States and had a citizenship when the alleged crime happened. And so he has already paid his due. He's already paid his membership fees. You should give him the value of that membership. That is value for that time. Or better up, don't harass him over something that you shouldn't be harassing him over. Let's drop the damn case already.
Yes, exactly. Well, we will wait and see how that turns out. It might be the case that I sort of have, my intuition is that Trump's got in whoever it is in whatever department and whatever, people were like, we've got to get after Roger, that they will either get fired, reassigned to something different, or just kind of, it won't be as much of a priority and things will drop off in that regard. And maybe it will just die quietly, even if it didn't happen with a big, involvement of Trump or anything. But that's just kind of my intuition, and you never know until it's over. So, we'll just hope for the best, really, on that front.
To be fair, I have also seen on social media discussions around whether or not Roger's case is valid. And there are statements that say that he both declared how much he did pay in taxes and he declared how much Bitcoin he had when he left, and that those two are not compatible with each other. I have not cross-verified or referenced anything. I think the taxes are stupid crap that should get removed either way, so I don't really put too much effort into what's right from that perspective. You chase someone out of your country, they fled. That's enough.
Leave them alone.
Stop hunting.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Okay. In the mix of all this other stuff that Trump has been doing, he did also put out a crypto executive order. Thanks, most likely, I guess, to David Sachs for that one, which in a bunch of other things appeared to ban CBDCs. I might actually just pull it up here and see if I can read the specific text. There was a lot of back and forth with different people saying whether it was or wasn't a ban, or
My understanding is that it is a ban, but the definition of a CBDC comes from the CB side, the central bank side. But the danger of a CBDC comes from a C something whatever DC. I know, too many acronyms. A centrally controlled currency in which someone gets to decide who pays for what, who can pay for what they are allowed to spend their money on, is a clear danger. A surveillance state and a surveillance system that makes people unwilling to take risk and unwilling to speak their true mind is clearly damaging to society. And if you ban CBDCs like he did, that's great. But in a different order, he also put out some mandate to create like some other centrally controlled digital dollar thingy. And it's contradict itself. It's just, let's have another actor take on the responsibility of doing the bad deed and get people to praise what I've done because I banned CBDCs. I don't buy it.
All right, I'm going to read out the exact section so the listeners can maybe make up their own mind. So it is hereby ordered as follows, blah, 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 blah. Point 5. Taking measures to protect Americans from the risks of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States, including by prohibiting the establishment, issuance, circulation, and use of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States. And then there's a bit here about Section 2 definitions, what is a digital asset, which notably includes composed of source code that is publicly available. So there's kind of a bit of a carve out there for anybody making, public blockchains. And there's all this sort of stuff here. Section 5, prohibition of central bank digital currencies. And there's some stuff here. Agencies are hereby prohibited from undertaking any action to establish, issue, or promote CBDCs within the jurisdiction of the United States. And any existing initiative shall be immediately terminated, and no further actions may be taken to develop or implement such plans or initiatives. End quote. So basically, I mean, that's pretty clearly a ban, and it's pretty clearly it's over. But whether that holds true in practice, sort of remains to be seen.
The central bank can no longer make a digital currency. That's absolutely.
Or any agencies, though. That's what it says. Any agencies of the government,
Yeah. Well,
you think they'll find a way around it?
Order, like the day after or the same day, that they were going to do a lot of things to strengthen the American dollar and to make it more usable and define it as the reserve currency for the world, effectively turning it into So a digital version of the dollar. If it's not an agency doing that, doesn't matter. As long as it's a surveilling system that controls what people may or may not do with their money, it's a bad thing.
Yes. Okay. So maybe it'll just happen, or, roundabout. I mean, I, on the whole, was sort of impressed by this in the sense that not only it was the second day, but Ross got out. Good enough. And also, he said he'd ban CBDCs, and he did. All right. Also, for me, kind of good enough. I mean, obviously, if then there's some other roundabout way of trying to make it happen, well, I'll judge that as and when I see it. But I've been, on the whole, fairly impressed that the Trump administration have been following through on its promises to sort of let the jackboot off the crypto industry a little bit, right? We could easily be sitting here and have not had an order like that and still have Ross in jail and just have had some announcement like, haha, you dipshits, I'm in office, now you've got no accountability, right?
Right. He has done a lot of things that I consider good, and the ban of the CBDC is one of the things I consider good. But it is the mark of an effective politician to be able to say one thing and mean another, right? And he's been in office a couple weeks,
a week and a half,
a very short time now, and there's still many years of being in office in which he can do things that might not be good, or that might be even better, right? We'll see what it lands in the end. I do like that he went out so very strong and so very clearly pro crypto. I think a lot of people complained about the Trump and Melania coins, but the way I see it, that was effectively just a signaling flare to the crypto world that you will not be harassed for doing these things. See, even I can do them, and I'm a public figure everyone can see. So for me, I didn't buy any Trump or Melania. I don't follow meme coins or whatever. But I did see that after those went out, it's pretty clear that most people can now do most things again, right? We're back to half Wild West style.
Yes. Well, it has legalized a bunch of stuff by president, right?
It was really hilarious to see the Gary Gensler video responding to this.
I haven't seen that. What did you say? Jet? Maybe you can find it.
He made a music. He or someone made a music video. He started singing.
I think that was an AI parody. Yeah, that's right. I didn't think Gary Gensler was doing
that. It's totally dissing the crypto industry thanks to the lack of oversight and protection mechanics from the SEC now that he's left that place.
Okay, all right. I saw that, but I thought, this is an AI parody. But if you said it was good, maybe
it wouldn't surprise me if Gary did it himself. It wouldn't. Not the slightest.
All right. Okay.
If you want, I can swap.
No. Let's get it going. No, I want to hear this song now. It's coming recommended. If Jonathan's taste in music, I'm up to hear it.
Give me one moment.
I taste the music. It's just a funny thing.
Okay. How long is it?
It's a minute and a half, roughly.
Let's go.
All right.
Gary's on the beat, ho.
Aye. Gary's on the beat, ho. We know why this criminal fired beat, bro. Chart down, Market started screaming, oh geez, bro. Need you back, save us from this shit. Gary, please.
No.
Fuck them little crypto bros asking for hugs. Tried to laugh me out the SEC, they get rugs. First they wanted ETFs, pump funds, levered options. Now it's Trump's camps launching coins. Somebody stop them. Stop them. Stop them. Stop them. Let them burn and laugh my ass off while I'm watching. Sometimes you gotta walk away to let them miss you. On-chain crime tidal wave, let it hit you. I'm smiling ear to ear, Baron, take a picture, whipped you. I'm a little bitcher, so you're richer. Say, folks, I hear you like scams. Don't come crying to me, it's out of my hands. I tried to help you, but Donald had other plans. I guess a few more drugs, you'll understand. It's kind of funny how you were all scared of me. And now you get the whole Trump family. You said you didn't need protection, but it's evident. Certified rubber boy, nah, that's your president. Drop, 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 drop. Done fuck him up. Stop, 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 stop. No, it's not enough. Thought you were saved when your boy got fired. Now you're just the exit liquidity for insiders. They don't like me. They don't like me. They don't like me. Hey. They don't like me. Or SEC. I'll let them be. Hey. They don't like me. They don't like me. They don't like me. Hey. They don't like me. Or SEC. I'll let them be. Suckers.
That was pretty good, actually. I like it. Well, there you go. Kendrick Lamar crypto parody. All right. There we go. Well, I like that. I definitely don't think Gary Gensler was cooking that one up, but I'm glad the internet delivered as it usually does. So good stuff there from the AI rap artists out there. Okay, so we got one more point about this whole Trump shenanigans, which was, and actually we have two more. One is the Bitcoin strategic reserve is out. And now it's the digital asset stockpile. So I didn't follow all the ins and outs of this, but basically the BTC guys were over the moon that they were getting supposedly special treatment. The US was going to buy BTC not crypto, etc. Right? But then it turns out apparently the Ripple team have been spending a ton of money on lobbying behind the scenes and have basically either that was just a false promise to begin with, or they've paid them enough money to change their mind. And so now there's either not going to be anything, which might be the result of all the turmoil over this, or there will be a digital asset stockpile, which means it's not going to be BTC only, which is so funny because all the people who wanted them to buy BTC to pump their bags are basically upset because the legitimacy of them being special and so forth from the government is undermined if they also buy some Ripple, buy some Ethereum, maybe buy some BCH, buy some Litecoin, buy some Doge, whatever it is they do. If it's anything more than just BTC, then BTC is not the anointed one. Of course, completely hypocritical to the cypherpunk ethos to even be in a position where you care what the government thinks about your coin. But that's what they're doing. What do you think about this? Is the government going to stack up a bunch of Ripple, Jonathan?
What I saw is that there's discussion about a digital asset stockpile or a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and that's just words. And then there are actions, and actions tend to speak louder than words. And if you look at Trump's company, it bought itself a bunch of wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. Right. I don't think I need to say much more. Yeah, it is what it is.
There we go. All right. Well, I've just been loving the screaming of, they're kind of getting what they deserve, right? After all this fake superiority of we're different to the rest of crypto and da-da-da-da-da. When they think they've got one on the hook, somebody who is like, yeah, I agree with you. The rest of it's all shitcoins and scams, which a lot of it is. Let's be real, right? But there's also a lot of legitimate stuff going on. When they feel like, we're being validated, and then it turns out, wait, you got in bed with a lot of people who are not actually on your side, and then later it turned out in a way that you didn't expect and also don't like. It's just very ironic, I think. So yeah. I've been enjoying that Schadenfreude element to it, but no surprises, of course. Nobody's really that loyal to BTC except the BTC cultists. So when everybody else just one way or another, crypto finds its way in, that's kind of just how the game goes. So I'm not surprised that happened at all, really. Okay, we got one more, which is question of the week. Actually, it came from Leonard on Twitter, Leonard 3267088. if my eyesight doesn't fail me, says, hearing chatter about potential capital gains tax exemption for Bitcoin and US-based projects. BCH is decentralized and not US-based, so perhaps would not be applicable. So there is significant US following and mining of BCH. Basically, could BCH benefit, or do we need to wait a bit to see what legislation the new administration actually implements? Crypto Wendy O video. Note that the requirements to comply with a US-based registration would seem to run counter to what a decentralized protocol represents. All right, so we haven't seen essentially any kind of capital gains tax exemption yet from Trump. But the question is kind of, will we, and what's, likely on that front? Well, what I would say is that, hang on. All right. You start off, Jonathan. What's your take?
All right. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes. I don't think it's going to be applying to Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or any of the existing things. I think it's going to be the C non-BDC it applies to. I think they're going to set up some kind of US-based stable coin, maybe Tether or a spin-off of Tether. There is no capital gains gone on this side of things, and you're free to use our dollars wherever you are in the world. Enjoy. That's what I think.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think that to the point that it comes to BCH specifically, I think if there is some kind of tax exemption for BTC and US-based projects, I feel like I don't know what the guidelines there are for what will or won't be a US-based project, but I would feel like BCH is in a perfect spot because just like with the ETFs and all this kind of stuff, we have so much incidental protection because BCH is the real Bitcoin, because it was from the same Satoshi Nakamoto Genesis block. It's been proof of work the entire time. There was no pre-mine. There's nobody who can argue about any of that, right? So if they give a specific exception to BTC, then sort of by default, it's very likely that BCH will fall under the same umbrella, right? Otherwise, you would need to, by default, that's how it would be. You would need to make a specific case that BCH was excluded to not have it fall under the same regulations, etc., as BTC, right?
Let's assume you're right. Let's assume you're right, and they classify BTC and BCH by just inheritance to be capital free with the definition of this is American. Does that mean they know who Satoshi is?
No. That's why I'm saying, because I think what the point being made is that it's like they want to exempt US-based projects and will give one special exception to BTC because it's the biggest and the most fair, and however they came up with it. And I'm saying that if they give a one special exception to BTC, they would also give it to BCH, right?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, right?
Yes.
They start with one, and eventually other politicians come along, and it just keeps growing, or it keeps being abused by people who have a bunch of money and want it to be one way and not the other.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So do I think a capital gains exemption is likely? Somewhat. I'm not as bearish as Jonathan, but I feel like it's definitely not a sure thing. So maybe 50% chance, maybe 35 to 50% chance that it comes off, and slightly more than that it won't.
If the rest of the world gets capital gains free Bitcoin, at that point the US will too, because the capital flight otherwise would be too damaging. But right now, most of the world that I can see are actually going harder down, or going the route of taxing unrealized gains on cryptocurrencies rather than making them capital gains free, as going the diametrically opposite direction. I don't think the US has anything to be scared about on this matter. I don't think they should expect a capital or talent flight if they don't do this. Again, as I said, I think this refers to things that haven't been launched yet, that they want to do, that is going to make US dollars more widely applicable worldwide and maintain its role as a reserve currency in the world.
Yes, very, very possibly. So speculation from us there, but we'll have to wait and see how it actually plays out. Nothing's real until it's real, I guess. So we'll circle back on this if something gets announced. But in the meantime, yeah, definitely don't hold your breath on that one, I would say. Okay, in other news, and all the other news for this week is sort of related to that topic that you were just hitting on there, Jonathan, which is that there was a big announcement about USDT Tether integrations into Lightning is going to be a bit of a thing, which is interesting because I remember at the 2021 BTC conference, there was a lady who was on the panel, on the desk, on the live stream, saying that was going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. And we reviewed that, and I mocked her and said, that's complete nonsense. That's not going to happen. And lo and behold, it didn't happen. But now here we are in 2025, and the gears have been grinding forward. Like she said, in the next 18 months, right? And I was like, that's definitely not going to happen. But here it is in 2025, Tether integrating with Lightning, right? And we've also had Twitter announcing a partnership with Visa for payments, which some people have been taking to mean, okay, maybe Twitter is going to try and get into this whole payments game. Maybe they're going to launch their own coin, or maybe they're just going to get all wrapped up in the existing payments infrastructure and then ID everyone, and that will be the CBDC, right? So it's like there's still these various ways that a CBDC by another name could be making its way into the mix, right? It's like we're not out of the woods yet. There's still so much desire, it seems like, for something like this to happen in the world. What do you think, John?
I think you're missing one news item on this list that is quite pertinent to this.
Yes.
Bank of America tweeted, and I can't quote it because I don't remember exactly what they said, but they tweeted that they were essentially ready to start implementing cryptocurrency-based offerings as soon as regulations would allow them, right? Effectively calling on Trump to make sure that they could go ahead on this. And if you take the USDT on Lightning, and you take the no CBDCs ban, and you take the Banks of America willing to go into crypto game, it kind of paints a picture of a dollar-based stable coin that works because the hub and spoke model of banking works. It's few enough actors in that space that they could have big channels working on Lightning, and that we might actually see that happening relatively soon. It would allow for transfer of value between parties as long as they go through the banks. The banks maintain the same point of control they have with KYC and whatnot, and everyone who has Bitcoin and wants to send money through the Lightning network gets less routing failures and less problems with Lightning because the banks are serious big-time actors who know how to do what they need to do. But the entirety of the freedom aspect, the entirety of the peer-to-peer side of Bitcoin is essentially gone at this point.
And this is it. This is the Bcasher big blocker vindication, isn't it? Right? This is the pieces slowly grinding into place for this whole.
It is also proof
2015.
we haven't done enough.
Yes. Well, yeah.
We need to step up the game. We need to scale up. We need to get much more usage on it because
traction. Yeah.
We predicted 2013, 2014 that if you could get the politicians and their children into using Bitcoin, then they will never do something that harms it from this perspective, and then we would actually be free. But here we have an equivalent of a CBDC that has the same control mechanism, the same surveillance mechanism, the same negative aspect as a CBDC does, but because it uses Bitcoin as the unit of account, people are gonna praise it.
Yes.
Well, I won't, of course, but we can compete. And if we had been first to the field, and we had, if we had shown the path, then we would have been a much freer society. Right now, we're suddenly finding ourselves needing to compete with an ever stronger actor.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't look good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it never looks good for the resist. I was watching Star Wars Episode 4 last night. It never looks good for the resistance until they kind of just barely get over the line. So I still have that kind of perspective. I'm an optimist, but yeah, you're right in that sense. I mean, it is just like if you could show these headlines on our Bitcoin in 2015, it would match exactly what the quote unquote conspiracy theorists, big blockers said would happen. And it would be the BTC or the small blockers at that time who were saying, that's never going to happen. That's such a conspiracy theory, etc., etc. And here we are. And a lot of those same people who were there now are cheering this on because it was never about Bitcoin. It was never about the freedom aspect. It was never about an initial currency. It was just about them pumping their bags, or it became that way.
I mean, if you look at your news, the BTC backlog dips close to empty.
I was going to get to that. It's a different thing.
Small blocks are fine because there's going to be space in them. And if you move all the transaction onto a Lightning network, which follows a very specific handcrafted routing table, which is bank to bank, and then you transition users over, you put a stable coin on it, the banks don't tell you that you no longer hold dollar and you now hold USDT instead. And when you send from one place to another, it just works. It sounds like everyone should be happy, right? Well, no. Because even though some people are able to set up their own Lightning channels and build their own open source interfaces to Lightning, when they go into a store and want to buy their cup of coffee, the store will show them a Lightning invoice, they will scan it, they will look for a route, and the bank will say, you are an unidentified user, you have not passed through KYC, you have not proven where your source of funds are, this payment will not go through. You will still be excluded from society if you desire privacy. This is still very much a surveillance-based outcome. Again, I think I said this on a tweet somewhere. We have underestimated our adversary. They are winning still. We need to majorly step up our game if we want to avoid a future that is dominated by the surveillance state.
Yes, very, very sobering stuff. I mean, obviously, we're here doing everything you can. Well, we can. What would be your top elements that we need to fix or improve to avoid that outcome?
I don't know. I mean, I do what I can, right? I help produce the Bliss conference. I work in the space. I take my payment in crypto. I spend in crypto whenever it's technically possible. And when I can't spend directly in crypto, I use intermediaries to bridge the gap. I also encourage people to do similar or the same. But I don't know what it actually takes for David to win over Goliath in this context. I don't know when you get to the point where essentially people rebel against the system. It's very unclear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite so pessimistic. I think, yes, the pieces are moving into place here. I agree about that, but that was inevitable as time goes on. That was going to keep happening. And in 2023, on the show we talked about, was 2024 going to be the year of CBDCs? Okay, no, it wasn't. And we talked about, is 2025 going to be the year? Okay, maybe, but maybe via a roundabout way. Okay, we got the CBDC ban, but then maybe these other things are going on. Maybe it's 2026. Obviously we're running against the clock and it's still happening. but we're still like every period of time, we're still making a bit of progress and still getting like, oh, it hasn't happened yet. So we're still in it, you know?
I think I figured out an answer to what you can do. Value privacy. If someone wants to pay you in a way that is private, let them pay less, right? Put value on privacy. Put an actual number on how valuable privacy is to you. Act accordingly. If everyone did that and the value of privacy is non-zero, then financial incentives will speak and we will change the world.
Yeah. Good thought, actually. Okay, well, just on this as well, let's just touch on this thing about the backlog. I really wanted to bring this up because this is a very critical point. So this is some tweets from a guy, Tom Honzik, who was pointing out that the backlog of BTC blocks got close to empty. So for the last, God knows how many years, at least 7 or 8 years, right? Basically, there's essentially permanently been a backlog on the BTC network because of the block size limit, and the demand has far exceeded that, right? But that backlog goes up and down. If it's way more than the capacity, then the backlog grows. And if it's less, then the backlog shrinks. And the backlog nearly has shrunk to nothing. So for the first time in nearly 2 years, the Bitcoin network is running out of pending transactions to fill up new blocks. And there was something like 5 or 6 blocks left of transactions. So it was within potentially an hour or two of the BTC mempool clearing for the first time in freaking forever, basically. Now this, my quote on this, my take on this was, quote, "This is actually enormous. BTC people will celebrate scaling fine, fees low, and try to justify smaller blocks, but potentially they have finally driven away demand to competitors permanently. Everyone is on another chain or knows BTC is not the place to start building," end quote. And I think this is critical because, as I've said before on the show, when the BTC blocks get full and the fees go up, that drives people onto competitors in this endless cycle. People onboard to crypto, they join BTC, they get burnt with high fees, unreliable transactions, etc. They look for another solution, they move into another chain, another ecosystem, conferences, meetups, podcasts, etc., etc., etc. And every year we've been going through that cycle, but we might now be finally getting to the point, or at least soon, that's over. The whole world of everyone relevant who was potentially really going to try BTC has tried it and moved on from it. Because when the demand drops off, if there's not new demand coming in to fill it up, like if you run a bar and everyone who comes, you say the entry price is $50 when the next door is $5, if you maintain that policy because you want to be oh so exclusive, at first that works, but soon enough you have everyone else in the other bars, right? That everybody has just forgotten about your bar because they're all happily in the other bars, and you've essentially created the popularity of your competitors. And I feel like that's maybe the point that we're finally at with BTC. What do you think, Jonathan?
I think every time conditions to interact on the BTC network gets harsh, then people will either leave forever, leave and come back, or leave to something else. Right? That's an inevitable outcome. And this has been happening over and over and over again. So you're right in that people go elsewhere. I don't think it's everyone yet. I think that's a bit early. And as he points out, like nearly 2 years, means that just 2 years ago we had the similar situation. We could have claimed the same thing back then. What I will say though is that eventually your take will absolutely be right. Eventually, I don't know when that happens though.
Yeah, we're not gonna see it coming though. Probably it will just one day. That's the whole point. Is that the people who actually like the megabyte block size limit, they don't understand that every time the fees go up, they say, oh, wow, look, we've got so much demand. And every time they go down again, they say, look, see, there's no problem. We've got plenty of room. Scaling is fine. But what they don't understand is that every time that cycle repeats, more and more and more people learn the lesson that BTC is not reliable, it's not usable, and they move to alternatives.
I don't know. To be fair, there are actually much more nuance to it. I mean, if you look at it as a layer one network, then this is true in all contexts. But if you look at it as a multi-layered network, then as long as you have like half people going in on layer one and half people going in on layer more than one, then only the people on layer one is going to get burnt and go away, and just a small fraction of the higher layer people going to get burnt when they try to.
There's not that many higher layer people. There's not that many higher layer people, though.
Actually, you argue that there isn't, but if you look at El Salvador and the Strike network, they onboarded not onto layer one, but onto a higher layer. And so the users didn't touch layer one, they just came in at a higher layer. And if you're looking at the like Bank of America announcement and the USDT coming to Lightning and so on, we might see a case soon where the vast majority of the people getting onboarded to Bitcoin gets onboarded on a different layer, not on the base layer, and they don't get to experience that frustration and leave. That frustration gets reserved for network administrators and people who are, programmers and whatnot. And so it might not have the end result you think it will have.
No, but in that case, then they're getting onboarded to basically rebranded fiat with a Bitcoin logo on it. And then the difference between that and crypto is all the stuff that they can't do. They can't do DeFi, they can't do this. They've basically been moved into a rebranded banking system, and that's fine. Or well, not fine exactly, but that's one way that things can work out. But then there's still it's pretty horrible. But there's still an appeal to crypto then, because they're different. That's very different to they try BTC as an authentic crypto and have a bad experience with it and think that's a problem with crypto, which it was a very badly managed crypto, right? As opposed to they use a reskinned banking system and then slowly figure out, okay, I have this BTC app, but it's nothing like what's going on in the rest of it's the inverse of Bitcoin, not crypto. It will be Bitcoin, not crypto, but it'll be crypto, not Bitcoin, because BTC is just captured.
I'm making an assumption here that the things you do on crypto are natively better than the things you do outside of crypto.
Well,
I think that assumption is right.
In
fact, I'm clinging to it as if they were the last, pillar of sensibility in life. And I've said this a couple times before, we can't compete on payments alone. The only field in which crypto can compete with the banking industry and the nation state today is the non-custodial aspect of finance. We are able to remove middlemen, which allows us to be more efficient. It doesn't matter if you measure it per byte or if you measure it per joule or whatever unit of measurement you want to do. Remove middlemen is going to be more efficient, and markets don't tolerate inefficiency forever. So I think we will eventually win out, but we could have a 600-700 year long non-CBDC surveillance. Everyone's in a bank account, sending their tethers back and forth in their stores, being fully surveilled. Some people get, snagged from the streets if they talk bad about the president or whatever. It can be a real dystopia coming in, even though the crypto side is better.
Yes. Well, the main key in my mind is just I just think there's so much. Again, maybe this is not the last time this cycle happens. Maybe we see it another 1, 2, 3 times. I don't know. But it feels like we're getting very close to the end of that cycle, because you have to have it to the point where BTC, Bitcoin, is a brand name that everyone in the world has heard of. Everyone who could maybe kind of somewhat be interested in trying it has tried it and then decided this works for me or it doesn't. In most cases, it doesn't, in which case they either go back to fiat or they go into another crypto, right? And eventually you've got through the whole mill of everyone.
I think it's pretty evident by now that the halvings of Bitcoin are not driving price as hard as they used to. The
Yes.
increase in value is not as fast as it used to. And
Yes.
the outcome of that is that people are looking at crypto and saying, why should I go with Bitcoin? There are a bunch of shit coins over here that might explode and make me rich. And if I come here for the sake of getting rich, I should probably go try all these other things instead.
Or if I'm trying to make a payment.
That the BTC maxes are complaining about this. It's getting pretty vocal and pretty loud how much they dislike this new reality, or it's been there all along, but it's pretty prominent now. And so, yes, they will have driven out a lot of people. People will be doing other things.
All right. Anyway, that's basically enough on this topic, I think. But I'm sure that in a future episode, I'll be referencing this moment, because this is the kind of thing that comes up important in context to later on when we see, somebody having a meltdown like, guys, I just realized that we've been pushing away demand, not scaling this whole time, or whatever, right?
If you don't come back and point to this moment in the future, it doesn't really matter that much, because people like Luke Dash Jr. will go back and point to this moment and say, this is why we should have 300 kilobyte blocks, because you're not using them anyway.
That's right.
So,
exactly. And they don't understand. It's so crazy.
It's used in a lot of different ways.
It's crazy that they don't see, like, okay, this is their evidence that there's plenty of space. It's like there's plenty of space because it's like, an abusive relationship or something. If you punch someone in the face repeatedly and then they stop coming back, that's like, it's because you were punching them in the face. It's because they were having a bad experience, not because, they otherwise would have been. Like, anyway, I don't know, whatever. So on this topic, we've got community comment of the week, comes from Need Creations. This is some bangers right here, who tweeted out on the January the 23rd, should I read Hijacking Bitcoin? And there was a bunch of commentary and discussion in the comments, obviously. And then quote tweeted themselves and said, every Bitcoiner I know is telling me not to read it, while everyone I don't know is telling me I definitely need to read it. Am I in an echo chamber? The answer is, of course, yes. And so this is Need Creations, who I believe I've talked to on Twitter probably at some point. I do recognize this account and has been, rude and dismissive. Well, probably I don't want to make any claims that I can't back up, but I feel like this is the kind of account that is always saying, okay, stupid Bcashers, blah, 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 blah. And now finally is getting the message like, wait, these guys are actually saying something important, and I need to at least look into both sides of the argument. And I've been dismissing the other side of the argument without never looking into it, because everybody who was on my unquote side told me not to, right? This is the moment of realization, and I think we're just having so much of that, like we talked about with the hoax episode. The truth leaks into the bubble and eventually it starts to pop, and that really seems like what we're starting to get this year as a combination of all these factors. Bitcoin not being the anointed one in the Bitcoin strategic reserve, right? The demand falling on the BTC chain, these guys starting to get the idea like, wait a second, I must be missing something. Reality is not matching up with these promises that we were just going to have the super cycle and keep going to the moon, right? The hoax is ending. Yeah.
Yeah, I also responded to it, and I effectively said something along the lines of, it doesn't matter if you're in echo chamber or not. Just go read the book, make up your own mind, and then use that information to judge everyone who's telling you either way. It doesn't matter if they tell you yes or no, or read it or don't read it, or burn it or whatever. Read it, learn what's inside, and then you have an opinion. And when you have that opinion, you can just deal with it.
Yes, I know, but whether or not that was happening, the making a public point about it, and I don't know whether this was self-aware or not, but whether it wasn't or it wasn't, it's just spreading the message so much further, like to everyone else, being like, wait, am I in that same echo chamber? You know, by asking the question, it's putting the idea in everyone's mind, which was why it was so good that it got some traction there, you know?
Yeah, so this connects back to the whole we're seeing a bunch of new people in the space. This is the kind of persons who previously would either be entirely dismissive or ignorant of BCH entirely. And this isn't the first account that, as part of hearing something about the hijacking Bitcoin or interacting with one of the Alan Hans guys or whatever, who gets this inconsistent worldview, right? Where they used to be in, the answer is obvious. Bcash is a shitcoin, and I should say it's a shitcoin because otherwise I'm not in the right place. To hearing their friends or hearing reputable book authors or whatever say something that contradicts that worldview, and then finds themselves unable to accept that, you know, they can't just ignore it, right? They have to figure out something's broken in the world, they have to fix it, and so they need the information to know what is actually true.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I feel like this is then our meme of the week is from Jonathan Fuchball on this, where he made the sudden realization meme, which is, I think, maybe my second favorite meme template. My first one I always say is the midwit bell curve. That is by far the best. But this is maybe my second favorite, which is this guy at a music festival who looks a bit like my cousin when he was younger, having a like moment of realization in the middle of this crowd of everyone, having a good time. And the text is, we've just been laughing about a fork and the BCH guys have been executing it on it for 8 years, ? And I feel like it's just that exact moment. Like, people have realizations in one moment. And after all these years of, we're going to add this upgrade, we're going to copy them if we need to, BTC is going to take over. Once enough of reality does not add up, there's just like that moment of starting to question. Everything else that comes after that is just downstream. It's just time playing out, right? I found some new information, talked to some new people, thought it over, you know, shifted my opinion slightly. Then that brought me into contact with new information. I got further and you know, in the end, I figured it all out, right? That I'd been lied to and this was all fake and everything. But all you need is that critical moment of, I'm going to go and look into this for myself. And then history starts to rewrite in your mind, or it should in any case. And it just nailed it. I made a bunch of these sudden realization memes afterwards, but this just nailed it. Because putting that picture, when you have it as a meme, it's always so much more impactful too. Putting that picture and getting that into the public consciousness, again, it just helps people to themselves think, am I in this same echo chamber? Do I need to rethink how I thought everything played out, you know? And that questioning is ultimately what leads people to the truth, which is beneficial to us because we're on the side of truth, right?
Yeah.
So
there's actually quite a lot of discussions between the BTC and BCH guys that ends up in a similar manner, where we on the BCH side, we tell them, like, make a commitment, set a specific date, make something to hold yourself accountable for your actions so that you have some anchor, some point to look at. And I think that is a very effective strategy, because once they do, they reach the point of your meme, right? Before then, they can hand wave and dismiss, and this is just a pretty picture on the internet. But when they have that point of commitment, or they have that specific anchor point to which they look at themselves and determine, like, am I actually doing what I'm saying doing, or am I just, as you put it here, LARPing it? And a lot of people on the BTC side who aren't happy with the direction that BTC has taken the last 5-10 years, they are talking about doing something about it. But it's more we've been talking about doing something about it, and very little actual doing. And so at some point, it would be good if they wake up and realize that, hey, these people over at BCH, they sat in the same shoes Well,
Yes.
you had the same shoes as you, sat in the same place. We're at this point in the development cycle a long, long time ago, like 2013, 2014. We were just
2015.
talking about doing something about it.
Now we
And
pulled the
then
trigger.
in 2015, 2016, it started becoming real. And at 2017, it actually broke out. And since then, we have been independent. If it took us, like, I think Gavin talked about the block size in 2014 on his blog the first time, something like that.
Yes.
It took many years before we actually took action.
Well, there was already action. No, not really. There was not sort of many, because it was already firing pretty fast. It was like the blog posts were in 2014. There was alternative clients by 2015. There was obviously then all discussion and censorship. There was conferences. There was all this stuff.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about like the creators of XT. They acted much faster. I'm
Yes.
talking about the vast majority of people involved, the people who
Yes.
didn't do anything until the fork actually happened.
Yes.
I am one of those people, right? I thought everything was going to sort itself out. Obviously, greater minds will prevail or cooler minds will prevail. Obviously, there's no malice. Obviously, everything is going to end up in a good way, because why wouldn't it? And over time, I got more and more frustrated with the situation. And it took many years for me to go from LARPing about what to do to actually doing something. And now here I am, co-founder of General Protocols, 28,000 BCH TVL. I've actually done something now. I'm just saying, this meme is pretty apt. It's very accurate.
Yes. Emergent Reason says in the comments, I don't think they yet realize what a target they're putting on their back by publicly considering overthrowing Core. And I mean, yes, I agree with that, but that's going to help to wake them up, basically, is that it's like being in a padded cell or something, as they start to actually lash out and try and change things, they're going to discover resistance in the world against it. It's very easy to say there's no walls when you're standing still, but once you start actually moving around, once you start looking for the door, once you start trying to find your way out of the cell, that's when you discover, holy shit, these walls are real, and the people who are outside telling me, mate, you're in a cell, I should have maybe been listening, because at that point I wasn't trying to push on the wall, so I didn't realize it was there. And then that will teach them, right? So I think that's what we're going to see as well. But sometimes people have to touch this; they have to learn themselves, Yeah,
Andreas Antonopoulos mentioned the gilded cage in one of his presentations when he talked about people exiting the system.
Yes.
And the reason the gilded cage exists is because you have value that you don't want to lose. You don't want to walk away from all that gold that makes up that cage.
Yes.
I think a lot of Bitcoin BTC people are sitting in a gilded cage today, unable to exit only due to their own complacency.
Yes. Well, yes, of course, well, that's why it all comes back to at the start of the show when I asked you, are people starting to maybe just cheekily sell a little bit of their coins and get some BCH? Because then that's just opening the door a little bit that's self-reinforcing. If their mind can be a little bit more like, well, I have my BTC bag, but I also have my BCH bag, and let's assess things seriously. And then maybe then that gets them a little further down the road, right? And then it snowballs. So anyway, we're going to see how this plays out for all these people. But
3 more years of price go up on BCH, then the entire ecosystem changes.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay, message to the community. We've had a pretty long show here, but coming to the end of it, what do you think the BCH community needs to hear?
Well, I think I've expressed a couple of times already. We've underestimated our adversary. They are winning. Things are happening. and we need to step up. We need to do more work. We need to commit ourselves further. Friedrich said it in the BLISS 2024 conference, 1% more. In reality, we need to do a lot more than just 1% more, but start there. Do 1% more today. Don't know what to do? Go tweet, talk with people. Got too much money? Invest them somewhere. Buy things, use the network. This is a use it or lose it situation. Just like a muscle, it will atrophy if you don't use it. Exercise your freedom at all times.
Yes. Spot on. Okay, and one final little sort of announcement or discussion point is that the BCH podcast is now 4 years old. It was in January 21st, I believe, or maybe 22nd. It turned 4 years old, so we're now in our 5th year of the show. And to mark the occasion, I just made a tweet with some stats. So in 4 years, we did 140 episodes, got to 9,246 Twitter followers and 2,609 YouTube subs, held a BLISS, prepped obviously the next BLISS, which is coming up, and got to 799 30-day Selene wallet users. Plus I made 4 music videos, and we had, I don't know, something like 30,000 audio downloads total on the RSS feeds. So that's not too bad. And it's just to take a moment to appreciate, sometimes you can only see how far you've come when we take a minute to stop and look back down the mountain. So thank you for everybody who's been along for the journey in those 4 years. Some who've been right from the start. And in fact, recently I've actually noticed a bit of a trend of new listeners to the show who've come into the show. They said, "Oh, Jeremy, I just found out the podcast. I'm going to go back and listen to episode 1 and then maybe listen to it from there." I don't know how many of those people will follow through and listen to certainly every episode. That's a lot. Maybe if you were going, running to the gym, over a few months, you could listen to all of it. But that is a lot. But it's been quite a journey in the last 4 years, and I'm certainly looking forward to the next 4. We're going to be ramping it up. It's an exponential. So that in some ways the hardest 4 years is already done. Things have been getting easier bit by bit, and the impact is certainly noticeable and growing.
I want to add some more stats to that real quick.
Yeah, all right.
We've also, last I checked, we hit 282.2 thousand total YouTube views with 2,612 subscribers and a total of 27,000 watch time hours. We've been streaming on Twitch for a total of 200 and be about 95 hours now, maybe a little bit more. And in the past year, we hit the top 10% of talk shows and podcasts category on Twitch.
Which is one of the smaller ones, to be honest. But let's just be real. 295 hours. So that means we've spent 12 days. We've spent nearly 2 weeks of continuously you and I sitting here, Jet. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. But 12 days, very, very well spent. And the impact on everyone, being able to listen to it, obviously replicated, has been massive. So yeah, anyway, thank you for any of our listeners that we've had along the way, and we'll keep delivering. It's going to keep happening. The next 4 years is already in motion. Okay, our FundMe contributors: Majamali Marcelli, founding father; Molecular, the show we love; Molecular, crushing it, donating to the show, donating to BLISS. Thank you very much. Absolute legend. Erdogan Talk, economics writer; Milton Friedman, at Cash Stamps, keep calm in Bitcoin Cash, and come to BLISS because you can meet Steve and get in the lottery; and Emergent Reasons, please experiment with new ways to get you, Callisti and Fiendish, in front of some serious media spotlights. Well, we're creating our own media spotlights, but yeah, I understand what you're saying there as well too. We're working on it. There's a lot of things to do. Support appreciation. Thank you to our donators. We had one actually pretty sizable donation recently. It makes a huge difference. So thank you very much. All that gets reinvested back into the BCH ecosystem, into the show, into Bliss, and so forth. So putting that to good work. Thank you to our patrons, Ricky and HP, and our sponsor, General Protocols. Check out bchbull.com, start guide, FAQs, and links at bitcoincashpodcast.com. If you're new, listen to episode 85. Try Celine Wallet at celine.cash. Final shout outs for the show. Jonathan, where can people find more of you, and any other shout outs you want to give?
You can find me on Twitter.
At Monster
Or just Google
Beater.
for me.
Yes. Does that mean something, by the way? Is that Swedish or something? What, monster?
Yeah,
I don't know.
in Swedish, the monster part is kind of self-evident. It means monster in Swedish as well. Bitar, bitar in Swedish it's just pieces, right? Parts. I tried to make a web framework once upon a time, and decided to have cute little monsters assembling my website. So monster parts or monster beta.
Like the Fiendish, like Fiendish and Fiendish crypto. Funny how great minds think alike. All right. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, there's your Swedish lesson for the day. Uninstall Duolingo. Who needs that? Okay, Jet.
I don't have a shout out, but I do have a song that I want to play for the outro.
For the outro. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll allow it, whatever it is. Let's just
It'll be
don't
good.
make me regret that. Okay.
No, I promise
All
it'll be good.
Okay. Amazing. And my final words is come to Bliss. Seriously, everybody just come to Bliss. It's going to be absolutely a banger. Go to bliss.cash. Buy a Velma on TapSwap and come along, because you will freaking love it. And bring a girl so that you can dance bachata. That's it. All right. Okay, let's hear this outro song.
Ladies and gentlemen, 300 megabytes of hard drive capacity. 300 megabytes of storage capacity. That's right. 300 megabytes of hard drive capacity. Think about it. The value and the usage of a computer with a 300 megabyte hard drive. What can that do for you? Oh, sky's the limit. The sky is the limit. When you're thinking about the capacity of a hard drive of that size, it's as if you have 300 huge file cabinets, 300 file cabinets of storage capacity. That's right. The biggest arena of computers today, the biggest arena, is in the CD-ROMs. It's the biggest growing sector of computers, and it's not going to stop. It is not going to stop. It's not a fad. Ladies and gentlemen, it's tomorrow, today. There's 26 volumes of an encyclopedia on one disc, on one CD disc. That's right. We're talking about 9 million words.